Hello and buenos dias. Welcome to our first ELSF Texas webinar in our series Unlocking High Quality Materials. Our topic for today focuses on how HQIMs are transforming instruction for emergent bilinguals across Texas. My name is Grace Delgado. I am the Director of Texas Initiatives for the English Learner Success Forum, or ELSF. And today, we will be exploring the current landscape of the emergent bilinguals in Texas. We will understand the IMRA cycle and the implications for Texas districts, and we will identify actionable steps to ensure HQIM adoption and implementation centers on EB needs. Again, we want to thank everyone for being here this morning. And before we introduce our panelists, we want to share a few housekeeping reminders. This is a webinar style presentation, so please use the Q&A section to send any questions or comments you have. While our panelists are presenting, we would like for our audience to participate through reflection, so we will be sharing a prompt in our chat. This prompt is available at our Padlet, where we will gather resources and answers so we can share as a community. The Padlet QR code will be available throughout our presentation, so please join the conversation. This Padlet and the recording of today's webinar will be emailed to you next week. Now, I would like to introduce our panelists for this morning. Unfortunately, Dr. Todd Davis, the Associate Commissioner of Instructional Strategy with the Texas Education Agency, is unable to be with us this morning due to a little travel mishap. But we do have with us this morning Dr. Xochitl Rocha, also from TEA, who is the Director of Bilingual Education and Gifted and Talented Programs. She will be sharing both information about bilingual students in Texas and information about IMRA. Buenos días, doctora.
Muy buenos días.
And we have with us Crystal Gonzalez, who is the Executive Director and founder of ELSF, who will help connect today's discussion to national insights and resources. Good morning, Crystal.
Good morning.
We want to thank our panelists for sharing your expertise with us this morning. And with that, we're going to go ahead and dive in. We are going to start with you, Dr. Rocha. And here's our question for you. What does the data tell us about Texas emergent bilingual population? What do we know about what's going on in Texas with our bilingual babies?
So once again, thank you so much for having me here in this platform. So Texas is huge, as you can see, right? So we are distributed our landscape around 1,202 approximately school systems across our beautiful state, which serves districts of innovation and charter schools, pre-K through 12, all of those school districts. And in addition to that, we also have schools that are servicing now students that are 18 to 55-year-olds, which are the adult charter schools. So we're really amplifying the opportunities and always looking to which are our students that are coming in with other languages that bring that linguistic richness to our school settings, right? So across our state is that 1,299% of our school districts serve one or many emergent bilingual students. So what does that mean? So across, as you can see, the fluctuation of population of EB students, we have 5.5 million students across the state approximately, and a quarter of them, 24%, are identified emergent bilingual students. But I always say, almost 50% of that 5 million come in with another language, perhaps because they're identified as Hispanic Latinos. So we know that beyond the 24% that we serve, there are other linguistic repertoires out there in our beautiful state. So as our emergent bilingual students identification has continued to increase, and I think we are still the number one of the nation to have the most identified EB students, really thinking about what does it mean for TEA when we say all of our students are going to be college, career, and military ready. This includes each one of those 5.5 million students, and therefore the 24% that we serve, and really creating structures and practices to give teacher tools that are appropriately certified to be in those spaces to serve emergent bilingual students, right? How are students learning content at age and grade appropriateness, but also leveraging their linguistic repertoires to really see linguistic and academic growth. So that's our beautiful state of Texas. If you look at the next slide, we also have guardrails, right? In Texas, we are blessed that we have legislation, statute that says that if our school districts are serving emergent bilingual students, you need to implement one of the approved 6 models that we have. And becomes a beacon, right? That 20 students of the same language in the same grade level, district-wide or charter network-wide, they are required to implement a bilingual program, which means that in a bilingual setting, we're also leveraging the partner language instruction to build strong linguistic support and literacy skills to then yield the English proficiency of our students. But the bilingual programs have different goals. If you look at hopefully the right side of the slide, you'll see the dual language and transitional. Those are the 2 or 4 models for bilingual education. We want to see that number dwindle for transitional really lower than now. We're proud to say that it's in the single digits. And we're looking to increase dual language education because as of the 86th legislative session, the legislator said, you know what? Research does recognize as dual language as the only program that yields the best outcomes, not only short-term for while students are in our school spaces, but long-term effects. So really changing the mindset of our educators to really amplify dual language across the state and serving not only EB students, but non-EB students to really provide that bilingualism to all. If you see on the left-hand side, if they do not meet the rule of 20 at the elementary level, then if they have less than 20, they implement either an ESL content or an ESL pullout. We do see a large number of ESL pullout there, but we also understand that they're the state of the state when it comes to certified teachers, 1. And then 2, we have even changed or strengthened our practices when it comes to alternative methods. And that's the numbers that you see towards the very bottom of the pie charts or the graph, is that we do still have teachers that are non-appropriately certified serving emergent bilingual students. So guidance before would say, if you're implementing a bilingual program, you have a bilingual consent form, but you do not have a certified teacher, code them alternative language program and even ESL. So we said, no, we really want to make sure that we help you as a state agency, help you build practices and start planning an effective bilingual program of choice to ensure that we are providing what the parents sign for, which is bilingual practices in those classroom spaces. So we're really changing, the way we approach and support our LEAs to ensure that, of course, all of our students are being met statewide.
That's amazing to see how the demographics continue to change and grow. Just a quick follow-up on the information that you're sharing with us about dual language programs and how there has been an increase in them. Are you seeing some of those patterns to continue to go into our secondary schools as well?
Absolutely. So roughly 247 school systems, or also known as LEAs, across the state are implementing dual language programming pre-K through 6th grade, pre-K through 12th grade. So we have seen a huge number of school districts now amplifying or extending their program all the way to 12th grade, because again, when the legislator said we want to see the increase of dual language, we also want to see the increase of student achievement. And therefore, we also reckon that the scholars out there said that biliteracy is not developed within only a few years of academic development. It actually is takes a longer. So the longer our students are given that opportunity to become bilingual and biliterate, it's even opening spaces for CTE coursework, right? So that they can amplify their talents and really see, police forces, nurses, educators, all the other engineering, all fields out there require bilingual skills. So why not leverage the program that we have and the linguistic assets that we have in Texas to really continue that growth? So to answer your question, yes, we have seen steady, slowly, but surely we're seeing that number increase as well.
That's fantastic. That's great to hear, because we know that biliteracy truly changes our students' lives, and it can give them so many more opportunities in the future. We're gonna move now to listening a little bit more about what's going on at the agency. So We want to transition now to talk about HB 1605 and the IMRA process and the changes that have been happening. So we really thank you for stepping up to like fill in the shoes for Dr. Davis and share that information with us. Um, can you share with us a little bit of what IMRA process is and how it's changing the way instructional materials are adopted in Texas, but also the impact for emergent bilingual students in Texas?
Absolutely. So I'm really going to do my best to do what he would do because he does it amazingly. He's just the expert of this. So I thank Dr. Davis for the opportunity and trust. So just in thinking about in Texas, right, it's a Senate Bill 1605, really thinking of how can we create systems, right, to really impact teaching and learning, right? The number one person that truly makes that students achieve an academic success is the educator. So really building the toolkit of teachers and giving them the appropriate materials to really teach in those spaces and really lower the creative burden of developing lessons. Rather, there is a lesson. These are the standards. These are some potential activities and connections to make so that the students achieve the content mastery. And in aspect of the emergent bilingual student and really thinking of that high quality instructional material to also tap into language development. And we want to ensure that those impacts of teaching and learning is not only academic, but linguistically in partner language as well, because we do know that we have over 2,000 plus schools, not LEAs, but schools that are implementing dual language, and hence they are really leveraging the content of mathematics, science, social studies in another language. So thinking of that landscape of EBs, we really wanted from the onset, create spaces of, we do serve emergent bilingual students that are learning in another language. So the IMRA process in itself is really making sure that the quality of the materials that are going to be utilized in those spaces give teachers the ample time of really digging deep into the skill rather than designing a lesson. Right. So how are we going to deliver this content specific skill to our students and then meet the linguistic, affective, and cognitive needs? I'm going to think about the EB students in those particular spaces to ensure that she or he has the equipment, the tools, right? What are some of the strategies that I'm going to have to unfold or unpack during this lesson that may not necessarily happen across the hall? So those unique pieces, right? And that is part of the IMRA, right? Making sure that all students are represented within that review of materials. So as you can see here, the review here is pretty much in stages. The very first one, of course, as you can see, the State Board of Education. All our stakeholders are coming together is important, right? This is a collective effort to ensure that all of our students in public school systems have these high quality instructional materials. And of course, school districts have the choice of adopting or choosing which ones best fit the program and the program goals in our case of dual language, and then how is that curriculum going to set well within our spaces. And then of course it goes through public comment to really dig deep into to what the community thinks, and then of course the agency staff. So the State Board of Education stakeholder is the first one. They're the ones in charge of making sure they review and they recruit those individuals that are going to come in and become part of the group. So they will select their review committee. They will then assemble the teams necessary to review the materials and then of course provide that adequate and appropriate training for them to see what look for in those high quality instructional materials. Once the State Board of Education creates that group, then we call it the IMRA reviewer. So it moves into the next piece, right? Those IMRA reviewers are then have to be sound and know Texas standards well, including TEKS and ELPS when it comes to EB students, because the ELPS is part of the curriculum when it comes to teaching EB students, whether the student is in a general ed classroom, in a bilingual classroom, or an ESL classroom. So how are the standards aligned in this discipline? Are there any factual errors, or making sure there is no factual errors, right? That everything is sound for the student. And then of course that it's suitable, right? That it's making sure that it is appropriate for the student age and grade. And then the quality review, that it's meeting the standards at 100% alongside with 100% of the TEKS and ELPS. Once that is packaged and they review that, then it's sent to public comments, right? They deem this as a high quality instructional material per se, met all the check marks. Then it goes into public comment, right? What are some of the things that they notice? They will then be able to say, flag either there's some factual error or there is an inappropriate suitability flag, right? Once that is compiled, and the agency is huge in public comment, right? We want to make sure that we are taking the community's perspective and the feedback into account. So once that is done, it is packaged and sent back to the agency staff for them to really think of that mechanism of control, right? First of all, if you can see here, very important for the materials to also have a space and portal and venue or chain of communication to familias, to families. We want to make sure that if it's something that is being taught in the classroom, that parents have the right to also have access to that curriculum to be able to know how those standards and ELPs are going to unfold within the classroom space as respective to the discipline. And then, of course, they also check to make sure that if the resource is going to be a hard copy or is it going to be something that is printable or digital use, that it's suited for both. And then, of course, it goes through publisher's review. And once the publishers, of course, review it, then it actually gives the opportunity for that final report to be done to see if it's going to, be IMRA approved or not. So as you can see, of course, there's lots of nuances and intricacies between each cycle, but the beauty of this particular overview is that it's not only one individual or one group of people making decisions, that it takes a village, right? It really takes the community of the State Board of Education, the agency, public review, and of course, a group of stakeholders that are come in to vet their time to ensure these materials are vetted and suitable for our students, and especially hopefully they also really understand the landscape of Texas when it comes to emergent bilingual students. The next slide really also outlines there's 4 pretty much components of the review in itself that are important to take account for. For example, the process of quality review, right? The very first one is standards alignment, right? Does this material or these materials talk about the standards based on the discipline and showcases the TEKS at a 100% for that grade and that content. Alongside with that 100% is what we also want the ELPs, right? Again, once you have one student in the classroom or in that campus or in that district, the resources need to meet the needs of that one student, and therefore the ELPs becomes part of the curriculum. So there must be 100% alignment of those standards to ensure that our students have a high quality material. The next one is the quality review, making sure that all materials support the student's ability. And in our case of emergent bilingual students, we have it in statute, right? That the delivery of instruction for teachers and students within a bilingual or ESL classroom is really cognizant of the student's linguistic and background assets. So therefore, meeting the linguistic, affective, and cognitive needs of the students. So it's really also ensuring that it is aligned to the foundational skills of literacy development. So our agency, of course, is science of reading. And how does that happen when a student is learning English as a strong foundation of reading, or in a biliteracy pathway where students are learning both partner language and English, to then, of course, making sure there is no 3 queuing systems in those materials. So really focus on that science of reading. The next one is the suitability and appropriateness, right? Do the content materials meet the suitability requirements that the SBOE has established, right? To ensure that all of the resources that are presented to students have no obscene or harmful content to the students. And then, of course, it's actually aligned to the TEKS and standards. That includes the factual errors, right? That the materials do not contain any factual errors, making sure that everything is aligned to what we know is true, and making sure that is appropriate for our students as well. Once those 4 categories of review are done, then it's also a piece of very important, the physical and electronic specification, so that how is that material going to be presented to the educator and to the students? Is it going to be a print copy? Is it going to be a digital use? So making sure that all those specificities are aligned to ensure that, again, if it's a high quality instructional material, that all of those notions are also seen, evident in any type of form or fashion that is going to be presented in the classroom space. And the biggest one, I think is very important also, is always bringing, we all know here, right, I'm preaching to the choir when it comes to parental involvement, right, parental engagement, which we now at the agency call empowerment. really bringing light to a parents, you have rights, and one of them being that you can access, right, how the TEKS, the contents, the standards, the ELPs, the bilingual program, the ESL program goals, you should know. And then now the materials, right? What are the materials that are being used in your son's or daughter's classroom space to teach them mathematics, science, social studies, strong literacy skills, and in dual language, Spanish language arts and English language arts, or another partner language with English language arts, so that parents have access to that material so they can have that home and school connection. So that's a big piece of our HQIM process to ensure that, of course, the familias are accounted for and that they have resources suitable for them as well. In addition to the review, there is a 2-category, right, for this rubric as well, which is called the implementation quality and learning quality. And as you can see, it comes with, these companion tools to really focus on the implementation and the aspects of the material that directly impact classroom instruction, right? And then support how students learn within a classroom space, right? Really thinking of, for example, in a reading language arts class, the science of reading, how are students making those connections with complexity, right? And ensuring that students are giving the opportunity to verbalize, to have oral language development, to be able to engage with not only the content, but linguistically for our emergent bilingual students. So the design in itself is really looking into, not only are we going to take into account the standard that is being taught, but does the material have mechanisms to track that growth, which is the progress monitoring, right? Does the unit assessment, are they formative assessments? What are some of the things? And those are the things that we want the teachers, which we call lesson internalization, right? They're not building a lesson. They're really thinking of how this lesson can look like in the classroom space as they leverage this high quality instruction, and really fine tuning how does it look like in the space of a bilingual student. For example, in dual language, I'm teaching this content in Spanish, but I want to make sure that I have an intentional cross-linguistic connection in the other language so that I bridge that biliteracy for our students. And then, of course, that supports for all learners, right? How are we tracking not only the linguistic and academic growth of EB students in our case, right? We like to say in our world, right, it's each learner, right? Because that individualizes the need of each student. We all come with different linguistic patterns, different linguistic abilities, different linguistic proficiencies, the same with academic proficiencies. So when we think of each learner, it doesn't matter if they're EB, non-EB, right? We're really focusing on the child's needs, and the teacher is able to reckon that based on the data that they have at hand to really impact instruction every single day moving forward, right? So those are the implementation quality controls. And then, of course, the learning quality companion tools that are really looking for these 2 questions are the components the quality and aligned to the research the best way to teach a subject? Is this deemed, like the mathematical concepts? Is this the approach and the appropriate route to teach in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, and all the way, and of course, in all grade levels and disciplines? And then when it's being taught and designed, do the components of this material support the students reaching that age and grade appropriateness of content understanding? And then, of course, for our students, including or in tandem with language development through the ELPs, because we also know they're at a very different proficiency level descriptors as well. So how is a teacher leveraging all that with this high quality instructional material? And it's going to give us that, for example, these components, right? This is specifically like for reading. Is it phonics rule compliance? Does it have that foundational skills that we're looking for? The knowledge coherence that we want to ensure that we build knowledge year to year for students. So the materials offer that, right? What they learn in 1 grade, they can spiral in the following grade. So then it's building capacity, building knowledge for our students as they move forward. Text quality and complexity, right? One of the biggest things that we revolve around, and I love, and I'm going to say it, the paradox. I read just recently a very good article around the Heritage Month, right? And it's really valuing, so are the materials valuing our emergent bilingual students in this case and bringing that richness into the fold? And how can teachers really prep as they do lesson rehearsals with other colleagues to really make sure that the learning quality is going to coexist within the materials and the student engagement? Like, what are those evidence that these components are going to give us? So it's really giving an opportunity for school districts to think through is before selecting an adoption is really, is this going to meet the needs of our students? Is this going to meet the needs of the program that we're implementing for our students, in this case, dual language, for example? And is it really going to yield not only the short term, the grade level content attainment that we want, but also long term? We're setting our students up for success year after year. So in that particular thinking, there's also additional companions that really kind of, it's not the rubric in itself, because if you look at the rubric, it gives you the indicators, but there's also companion tools that give us, or give, the opportunity to really understand, what does it mean for this indicator? How can we unpack this indicator, and what are some of the point scales per each indicator and per each category in the rubric, to really understand what are some examples or good examples of a high quality instructional material using this indicator, or what are some non-examples that we're looking at. The beauty of these companions or the goal of these companion tools is to really bridge the goal. Like, what is the high level expectation per bucket or per item in these rubric, to really, again, looking at, is there evidence in this instructional material that is going to meet the mark of these items? The next two documents is going to help us, or kind of talk a little bit more to unpack the use of these companion tools. So as you can see here, we're going to specifically focus on that one piece of supporting emergent bilingual students. And if you can see on the screen, there's just things that pop out in those indicators, right? We want to make sure there's language proficiency is taken into account in any particular subject, and therefore the ALPS needs to be visible in that material. The materials, right, that guidance description out there is really depicting what the materials will entail to ensure that we're meeting the needs of those EB students in a bilingual or ESL classroom. And are they designed specifically for classrooms like dual language, where they're making cross-linguistic connections very organically and much needed to ensure that they're making that biliteracy trajectory more evident? It gives potential misconceptions. And then, of course, it clarifies some key terms and connections. In the potential misconceptions that I love about it is, like, for example, even though we want linguistic support in all classroom spaces for EB students, those linguistic supports may look a little different, right? Those cross-linguistic connections may look very different in every one of those bilingual or ESL programs. So that specifically kind of calls out what are some of the look for specifying based on program, or the nuance between the goals of each program. Even though transitional, for example, is a bilingual program, the goal is not biliteracy. The goal of transitional programs is English proficiency. So the way to get there is going to be look very different than the goal of dual language, which we know that by the state, it says it's for students to develop bilingualism and biliteracy throughout the duration of the program. So is the high quality instructional material going to give the teacher and student the opportunities to make those connections between languages and build a trajectory from there? The key terms that we love to see, right, making sure that biliteracy and kind of, we have, and I can talk all day about it, but the gamut of how we think of biliteracy in the state of Texas, the cross-linguistic connections, and of course, all of those metacognitive and metalinguistic words that we want teachers to know and to think about as they're doing the lesson internalization and rehearsals. And then, of course, any connections that we make, we want it to be intentional and organic and aligned to everything else of the resources from the agency. So are they focused on the reading, that science of teaching reading, the math academies, and the RVs? So really making connections to those pieces that we have at the agency. And then the final tool is giving a little bit deeper dive into the total points, right? What is each indicator value, and how are they going to be scaled or rated to ensure that they meet the mark, right? There's additional guidance of how this can look like in the classroom space if utilizing this high quality instructional material resource for really teaching and learning. Then you'd see the third bracket of sample of what it looks like to have the EB support in mind at a high quality evidence. And then what are some of the things that are non-example of that poor quality evidence of that resource, not only not being high quality, but not meeting the mark for EB students. So this is specifically on that particular component. Of course, each one of those components will have this extensive evidence guide to really support as to how is the agency, or how is the state board, or how is IMRA process in itself really reviewing these materials and deeming them high quality to be in the spaces supporting emergent bilingual students. I know that was a lot.
Thank you so much, because it is a pretty complex process, and it does have a lot of layers. So Thank you so much for going, explaining the process, but also going deep into the pieces that do touch our emerging bilingual students in Texas and how there is a moment to check the materials against not just the needs, the linguistic needs, but the academic needs and the programming needs. So that way our teachers can be better prepared. I want to pause for a minute, and we just put in the chat a prompt to our Padlet because we want to make sure that we have a little bit of reflection time for our participants, and they can answer a question that we pose. What are some opportunities or challenges that you're finding with this new process? So if you can go to the Padlet, and as we continue our conversation, you can both answer in regards to the demographics, what is your context in where you're working, but also what are some opportunities and challenges that you see with this new IMRA process as it goes to adoption and implementing materials in your districts. But we are moving, as you're reflecting, we're moving forward to now have our own Crystal Gonzalez talk about the English Learner Success Forum. So, Crystal, we would like to know what prompted you in the creation of this organization? Like, why is ELSF, why does ELSF exist? Like, how did it come about, and why are we in Texas?
Very good question. Well, first, I just want to thank everybody for joining this important conversation. I know for ELSF, this is our first Texas-wide webinar and conversation around this. So just thank you for joining us. And if you're watching the recording, thanks for doing that. And Dr. Rocha, just thank you so much for representing TEA and your leadership specifically on this around emergent bilinguals and the process and sharing all of this. It's such an incredibly important context for us in our emergent bilingual community. So thank you so much for that. And then, of course, Grace, she is our Texas director. And I hope you will be seeing more of Grace in many places across Texas, but also she's been putting out some wonderful op-eds and some pieces that I hope you go to our website and check out how important this work is for our community in Texas. So thank you again, everyone. And as Grace said, how did ELSF come to be? And I think I always like to start back of like our why, because I think all of us come into this work about why we do what we do. Like many of you, I started in the classroom. I was a fourth grade bilingual teacher starting in Houston. So I have a lot of love for Texas, for a lot of my roots in education. And on my first day, I was given a binder of the academic grade level standards, a binder of the ELPs, and then they willed in about 8 sets of textbooks. And yes, I said binders because back in the day, we printed everything out. We didn't have the electronic copies. But I quickly found out that these textbooks, all of these textbooks that sat in the very back of my room, tons of them, they really didn't meet the needs of my emergent bilingual students. I found that out very quickly. So like any good teacher, and I think many teachers, if you are on this call, you have done this, spent countless hours adapting them, translating them myself, or I scrapped them all together and I made my own lesson plans because they weren't serving my kids, right? And as you can probably imagine, my first couple of years of teaching, I had no life. That was honestly what I was doing after work, because I cared that much about the learning that was happening in the classroom. And I have to say, not much has changed 20 years later. Yes, that was over 20 years ago, not to give away my age, but not much has changed, right? And I know when we saw some, before I started ELSF, there was one survey that found when teachers don't have access to great materials, they hunt for them online now. And if you think about that, if teachers are going online, teachers pay teachers, Google, Pinterest is one of the highest used sites. Think about what this leads to in our system. This leads to inconsistent quality that really impacts our low-income students and our students of color the most. And I think about our emergent bilinguals, right? And the survey said that teachers are spending between 7 and 12 hours a week searching for and creating their own instructional resources. Many of them not sure of the quality or if they're aligned lesson by lesson or unit by unit. And I just was thinking, like, in what other profession would we expect them to spend that much additional outside of work time? What other profession is that just an expectation? So I personally, and I think in our foundation at ELSF, we really believe that materials matter. They're concrete, they're daily. These are the stuff of lesson plans and units. This is what teachers and students do. They're part of the routine. And quite honestly, districts spend a lot of money on them. So we believe that the materials have to work for us. They have to include our emergent bilingual students. And that is really what is the basis for ELSF and me starting this nonprofit about 8 years ago. I really believe teachers deserve better. It is a lot of work. We already know that. And believe me, I think all of us collectively, educators, we know when the materials are not developed with our emergent bilingual students in mind. We can see it, we know it, we complain about it. And while things have gotten a little bit better in the last 20 years, we're just not there yet. I believe we have a lot more work to do. And so one of ELSF's recent nationally representative teacher surveys, this is most recent in the last 3 years, 80% of teachers still report that they do not feel the materials include research-based practices that are known to best serve our emergent bilinguals, nor do teachers feel that their materials are culturally and linguistically relevant. And so we have to demand better from publishers, quite honestly, and I do believe it's possible. And that's kind of why ELSF got together. You see the word forum in our name. And that means we bring together researchers, practitioners, materials designers, and our mission is to really increase the quality of what's out there for teachers of any emergent bilingual student. And our focus at ELSF, we could do so many things for our multilingual learners, obviously, but our focus is squarely on instructional materials and curricula. And we have to ask ourselves, are we collectively elevating research-based instructional practices for our emergent bilinguals while also meeting the teacher needs and ultimately our student needs, right? And so we believe that curricula teachers use every day, it is the foundation. Is it the silver bullet? No, we know that there's so much that surrounds it, right? But we do believe it's the foundation and that those materials must be quality. And in our world, quality does mean inclusive of our emergent bilingual students. And with this in place, teachers can spend time on their craft, making the curricula work for the students in front of them and not spending 7 to 12 hours online trying to look for them and creating their own. That's just we deserve better for our educators, right? So aside, Grace, from Texas being near and dear to me, I think collectively, I think about the country and what ELSF, we're across the country, but I think for me, Texas, obviously from serving the largest number of emergent bilinguals in the country, as Dr. Rocha described the vastness of what that looks like in the state. The other thing about Texas is bilingual education is deep. It is very deep. And quite honestly, I think that other states will follow Texas if we can get this right for our emergent bilingual students. And these are the core content areas in reading, math, and science in English and also in Spanish and other languages. So that's why we're excited about Texas. I think there's so much opportunity and there's some really tremendous leadership happening in the state where I believe it's possible.
I always love to hear about your story because you are connected to Texas and you have been in the shoes of our teachers, like you were one of us in the trenches. So you really understand how this is very much needed in our classroom. So that way our teachers can be better prepared to serve all of our students in Texas. So thank you. Thank you for that. For our audience, we have another question because we do want to know what kind of supports or partnerships you feel Texas schools needs the most when adopting or implementing instructional materials for emerging bilingual students. We know that it looks very different in different places, in different size districts, and with different demographics. So let us know, what do you recommend? What are some of your recommendations of what you would need in order to be better prepared to adopt and implement high quality materials, especially with this new cycle that we have in Texas with our IMRA process? So as we are moving towards the end of our presentation. We also want to challenge you to let us know one action that you will take in the next 30 days based on the information that you learned this morning. You learned a lot about the context of Texas and how Texas have grown with their demographics and their programming. And then you had some learning about this new process for instructional materials in Texas. And then you also know that ELSF is here to support some of the work. So let us know what is one thing that you will do in the next 30 days, also in our Padlet. But as we're coming to a close this morning, I want to thank everybody for being here this morning. I want to thank Dr. Rocha and our very own Crystal Gonzalez for their time today and for sharing their expertise with our audience. Thank you to everyone who joined us for your participation, for your questions and your comments. As mentioned before, we will be emailing a link to the webinar recording once it's available, so that you may revisit the conversation to share with others. And in that email, we're also going to include the Padlet, so you have the resources and the conversations as well. Please continue to engage with us, as this is just the beginning of our information webinar series. We actually have our next informational series, our next informational session coming up on December 8th. At 10 a.m. in the morning again. We will call it HQIM Unlock Why Materials Matter for Emerging Bilingual Students in Texas. So we will be delving deeper into HQIMs and their impact in our classrooms. So save the date and sign up for the link. We have the link in the slide, but we also have the link in our Padlet. And as our webinar is concluding, we ask you that you complete a brief survey. It's also in the Padlet. I'm going to stop sharing now. A brief survey so that you can provide us with some feedback and let us know what you would like to learn more about in upcoming sessions. But we are very thankful for your time this morning. We are very thankful for this conversation and for the beginning of this work that we're doing in Texas. We know that it's extremely needed for our students. We have a variety of languages, a variety of numbers, and we know our kids need all of these levels of support, not just in the lower grade levels, not just in our bilingual and dual language programs, but like Dr. Rocha mentioned, the dual language programs are growing and they're moving into secondary classrooms. And again, a lot of our kids continue to be in English only classrooms. Which means that every teacher in Texas is a language teacher. And every teacher needs to be able to have materials that support all of those students in their classroom to provide the right access that brings academic achievement for all of our kids. We must remember that all of these supports that we are asking for our emerging bilingual students are critical for their academic and language development, but they are also quite as important for other students in our special populations program, students below grade level, students that have some needs. And honestly, just like every teacher is a language teacher, every student is a language student. So it's important to have this support. So we thank you so much, and we hope that you sign up for the next session so we can see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for your time this morning. Muchas gracias, Dr. Rocha.
Al contrario, gracias a ustedes.